You feel this nervousness on the phone there?
Sir, I've been trying to make an urgent phone call up there.
Well, I don't think it's something I want to do on an overseas phone.
You gotta make some phone calls. Hang up the phone. Prank caller.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Packernet After Dark. This is the call-in show, the Packernet Podcast Network. If you'd like to call in, if you'd like to participate in the show, please feel free to do so. The phone number here is 608-501-0718. New callers go directly to the front of the line. We don't have any new callers, so Kyle, kick us off.
Ryan, what's up, buddy? Kyle from Madison. I hope you are well.
Good.
I guess the first thing, just in regards to the Super Bowl, I do think, I know like the transitory property is kind of useless in football, meaning like you played X team, we played X team, and we compare the two results. It doesn't always work like that.
Sure.
But I do think now that we know how the season ended, it's definitely worth revisiting the fact that the loss to the Eagles now looks a bit different in my mind, okay? I don't think anybody is going to debate the fact that that was the worst game we played all year, just from a Packers hurting Packers standpoint. Now, certainly the Eagles defense, had something to do with it, but it's just not even up for debate. We played horribly. We ran out of players. And we were still in that game, late in that game, despite all that. So, to have that game at 6 points only, late in the game, and then, I know like how it ended, whatever. Yeah, Saquon could have gone in for another score, whatever. I'm just saying, really, the Rams had the Eagles, really had them by the where and couldn't do it. But I do think you have to look at the Packers' loss now in a little bit different light. They lost to the eventual champ, playing their worst game, totally undermanned in Philadelphia. All right, so I think we do have to kind of change how we look at that. And I want to get your thoughts on that. Second, I just listened to one of the After Darks. I'm kind of catching up here, but Garrett was talking about, the Chicago Bears maybe tampering, and maybe they'll have, their first round pick removed or whatever, and then they don't have any reason to come to Green Bay, which obviously is funny. But I actually will push back on the point to the level that I don't even know if he's serious or not. But if I wanted to just hang out with Packer fans, I would just go to a Packer game. If I do end up going to the draft, I'm actually excited to hang out with the fans of all the other teams in the North and all the other teams just in general and talk ball and just have a good time and kind of check out, how they're, liking seeing our facility and our stadium and
sure.
Just talk ball with different people that you'd never have together. To me, that's the most exciting thing about the draft. And if I go, that's going to be what I'm really excited about. Just because people are just kind of inhibited at those kind of events anyway, both in liquid fashion and then just because they're kind of high on life. So usually it's pretty easy to strike up a person with a different jersey on,
Sure.
So I'm looking forward to talking ball with people from all over the country, different fan bases, and get their takes on the Packers. So draft's coming up. I'm getting excited. Anyway, talk to you.
That's a good point I hadn't super considered, really. My focus was mostly on finding, Packernet podcast people, but there are going to be people from all over the place, all over the country, probably even beyond that. So it's going to be pretty cool. It might be slightly hostile with Vikings and Lions and Bears fans, but I mean, yeah, you find Bills fans and Raiders fans, and those will be the easier conversations that could be a lot of fun. Especially giving them an opportunity to learn our culture a little bit. Like, hey, come on over, have a brat and a beer with us. Talk to some of the Raiders people about Max Crosby and whatnot. See if they'll be willing to send them over. Talk to some Jets fans about that whole situation. Find some Browns fans are nuts about the draft because they've had the number one pick 24 years in a row. So this was the whole thing for them. Browns fans are hardcore draft people because they had nothing ever to look forward to in years past. Not that it's changed a ton now, but it's probably going to be some Cleveland Browns fans there. Be like, hey, what's it going to take, man? Get your boy. But yeah, and I've talked about it a little bit, but in terms of, thoughts regarding how I feel now, having seen that game, it hasn't moved the needle for me as much as it has other people. Two main factors being the Eagles did not play that well against us. I don't think they played that well all year. And also, we didn't play that well in that game. It was close, but, not necessarily because we were dominant. The defense played pretty well. The offense was terrible. And I don't just think it's because of their defense, maybe a little bit. But again, we just got our teeth kicked in. It's an over-exaggeration, but when it's the Bears, it's the Bears. To the frickin' Bears. So, the Packers lost because they really started playing poorly down the stretch. And yeah, there's varied reasons for that. Jordan's injury, a litany of other injuries taking place for the Packers where they just couldn't quite get their guys out there. But again, I don't want to rain on everybody else's parade that's suddenly feeling good about the Packers who are down on them. By all means, please do. I enjoy you all much more when you're optimistic about the Packers, but just giving my honest opinion, I think the Packers are better than a lot of people were thinking beforehand, and now I'm kind of on the other side reining it back. But I'm trying not to, so stop asking me. I don't want to have to answer that question and rein anybody in. I want everybody to just go nuts and get excited and all that good stuff.
Hey, so I'm a little behind here, but I was just listening to, I think it was Beer Cheese talking about, the whole number one wide receiver controversy.
Yeah.
Now, everybody knew we needed a number one wide receiver, and I just don't think that's true. I think the reality was that we had a youth movement at the position with a lot of guys with tons of tools. And the hope was that multiple guys would develop skill sets comparable to a number one receiver, but that you'd have more than one of them. So that you're very difficult to defend, like a Swiss Army knife. I don't think anybody was like, oh, I hope we don't have a number one. Like, at least I wasn't, like, sure, be a number one, like, have the tool set of number one receiver. Of course, that's the goal, for as many of these guys to develop as highly as they can. But it's also not, in my opinion, hypocritical to now say we need a number one, because I believe that now you have enough sample size where, okay, nobody emerged for various reasons into a number one skill set. And now, if you want to have a competitive team and keep with the field, you better get a number one receiver, or at least a number one skill set type receiver. You know what I mean? Whether or not you use them as a decoy, like we kind of did with Watson or whatever, I don't care about the number one like it's a Madden playbook, who's playing on this side or that side. But just from a skill set standpoint, the Packers rolled the dice on the youth. It didn't develop. It's not to say it's impossible for Reed or Wicks or even Watson. It's not impossible. But the chances have gone down considerably after another year of sample size. And now it's very apparent that they either need to get one that's established, or they need to prioritize getting one that they believe has a good chance of becoming a number one receiver. And I think that's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Beer Cheese, but I think it's not that people talking out of both sides of their mouth. It's just that what was true is it's changed. Information is available now, and it has changed the playing field for the Packers at the receiver position.
Well, yeah, and that was largely my contention, I think, as far as my response to what he had said. It depends what we're talking about, right? I mean, I know that some people said we have 3 or 4 number one wide receivers. If the frustration is with those people, and that's who's being dunked on, unless they believe that we used to and then everybody fell off, but that's just not the case. Everybody played about as good as they did before, and they're clearly not number one wide receivers. It was a silly notion, and I think we all learned that that was a silly notion. But like you're saying, really what we're talking about is process. If the contention wasn't that we don't need a number one because we already have a number one, but instead we don't have a number one, but we have young people and I want to see them grow together and see what happens. Even if nobody necessarily becomes a true number one, I just want to see this group grow together, because let's just say, for example, nobody crosses this imaginary threshold into number one territory, but they all stay healthy and they all become solid number twos. Well, that's what they were before. I don't think so. Not necessarily. Let's say all of them are top 50 receivers. Just kind of crammed between like 33 and 50, right in there. I don't know that we'd be sitting here today saying we need a receiver. We'd all be talking about how great it was. That's not what happened, though. We got guys outside of the top 100. Quarterback didn't perform very well. Like, the whole offense kind of fell apart. And so we're sitting here going, we can't wait anymore. We have to add some form of firepower. We're not going to really touch the tight ends because we've already invested in that. We're not going to replace the quarterback. We're not going to add running backs. So what else is there to talk about? There's offensive line and wide receiver, and go figure, that's exactly what we're talking about. Bottom line is, nobody really took, like you said, nobody really took a step forward. Reed, I would argue, took a step back, a slight step. It's not a massive one, but we certainly learned that he has limitations and can be erased in certain games. Christian Watson, even if it's not his fault and it was kind of a fluky thing, once again was injured. Dontavian Wicks completely fell off a cliff, and Romeo Doubs in the middle of the season decided he doesn't want to play football anymore, so we can't trust him at all, on top of the fact that, again, really wasn't a massively impressive wide receiver. He was fine, not anywhere near elite. And so I think for everybody, we're all kind of on the same page. But I also think there's a lot of people who are gatekeeping and saying, you're not allowed to be here because you weren't here with me last year. But like you said, information has changed. Because now we're not talking about the same thing, we're talking about process. And I still don't have an issue with the process from last year. Because taking information this year and pretending it was available last year, that is what was going to happen in 2024, pretending that you knew definitively that 0 of our wide receivers were going to improve, which, I'll be honest, is statistically unlikely that 0 improve. But that's what happened. And so now that that did happen, we all have this information, and we're all kind of coming to the same conclusion. And you can say that it made you right last year, but it wasn't, again, it's kind of like, you had 18 and hit and got an ace and went to 19 or whatever. It's like, okay, you ended up being right, but there's a difference between being right and, having the right process. And I think there's a lot of I'm not talking about, I don't even remember what Beer Cheese said, but there's a lot of overly reactionary people who just want all these things, and nothing's good enough, and we have to do this, and everything's an emergency. And then when we arrive at the same conclusion, it's like, see, I was right all along. It's like, well, not necessarily. Ultimately, the question is, does it make sense in a vacuum? I'm not talking about the Packers, just in general. Does it make sense, given the exact same situation that you laid out, where you got 4 receivers showing promise, all of them being young, to give them an opportunity to grow together to see what happens before you invest in a position that is pretty loaded? Again, 4 receivers is a lot that show potential. Or do you want to invest a first-round pick or a big swing in free agency, despite the fact that we have a ton of other needs in other places? To me, it seems absurd that we would have invested a ton in wide receiver last year, even though, now with hindsight working in our favor, it would have ended up working out. Given all the information, I think it would have been a stupid decision. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back. We got more Kyle from Madison.
So about this new first down change with the chain gang and whatnot, what a completely stupid and inadequate half measure the NFL has concocted.
And I talk about this tomorrow a little bit too with another seeming change where they're going to add a couple more things to the things that are reviewable. Like, why is everything just like dabbling? Can you just do it? We're going to do it anyways. We're going to do it. It's going to make everything better. Just do it. Why is it like, well, we'll do it, but only this, not like actually in a way that's massively beneficial?
I mean, are you kidding me? This is worse than doing nothing. Just do nothing then. Don't put lipstick on a pig and try and convince me like you've innovated at all here. They've done nothing. They've solved nothing. They have solved nothing in this latest move. Okay? And it's beyond stupid. Why? Obviously, this has to happen. We got to chip the ball. I don't understand. Like, what is the problem? What is the damn problem? Look, World Soccer has been doing this for like 5 years. Okay? They have a chip in the ball so that if it crosses the goal line, the computer just lets them know immediately. It's with beyond dispute. Okay? That has not it's only affected the game positively. I understand in football that, okay, there's still going to be an element of it that's judgment call, right? Because you're going to have to see, like, is the ball carrier down? But when you have a game that is, they always talk about it's a game of inches, it's a game of inches. Yeah, so why don't we freaking figure out a way to measure inches, you morons?
That's a good point.
Especially when it's something as hugely impactful as first downs, and like they're just eyeballing it from 30 yards. Like, what the freaking heck are we talking about? You put a chip in the ball, and every time they move the sticks, the sensor changes. So now all you got to look for, you don't need to see the ball. We know where the ball is. We know the configuration of the ball. All the evidence that we need to find on video is the runner down or not? That's it. Then you already know where the ball is through the pile. And then you just tell the officials, hey, a little bit easier on the, calling it forward progress dead. That's it. You've solved like 60% of the problem. And instead we get whatever the hell this stupid nothing non-solution is. It's just, it just kills me because the technology's there. It's used in major sports, but instead we'll do nothing. And it's like, the product is going to suffer, and my favorite team is going to be. Oh, it just kills me, man. It's like they don't want to be successful sometimes, especially if you're going to foreign markets. I mean, people in foreign markets don't have patience for this garbage. They grew up with a free-flowing game that doesn't have commercials, and now you got 1,000 stops a minute. You're trying to pass this crap off as watchable in other countries. It doesn't make any sense. It's like just cognitive dissonance here at every level.
Well, having done about 8 seconds of research while you were talking, I wanted to delve into it because you mentioned chipping in soccer, which I didn't even know was a thing. So a couple things. First of all, it seems as though the chip inside the ball is actually dead center in the ball, and it's not actually used for crossing the goal line and whatnot. They use it for more motion and timing, like when was the ball kicked, what direction did it go, et cetera, et cetera. Whether or not it crosses the goal line, they use goal line technology, GLT, which consists of high-speed cameras placed around the stadium, which I'm assuming is very similar to hockey and tennis. I think the biggest issue with that is that I don't know that works in football. Because in football, you've got 20 people around the ball. We're not going to be able to necessarily see everything, although I still think it would be better because usually with the cameras that we have, you can see any part of the ball. Let me just read this real quick. Multi-sensors and triangulation. The chip itself doesn't determine goal line crossing alone. The ball is tracked using goal line technology, which consists of high-speed cameras placed around the stadium. The cameras track the outermost edges of the ball, not just the sensor inside. Now, the problem is going to be, because it's saying they're using triangulation, which means you would need multiple points from multiple cameras to be able to determine where this thing happened. Now, you can still probably do this to some degree if you're using multiple points. For example, this part of the ball here, which correlates to this part of the shoulder, which we can see from that camera, but I don't know if there's technology that can do that as opposed to somebody manually having to do that, which is basically what we're doing with review anyway. Although, it's not actually we're not really talking about review, we're just talking about setting the ball in the right spot, which if we reviewed it every single time, we would end up with the same result. But I think that's part of the issue, is that the chip, I don't know that the chip would necessarily do anything. I mean, one of the issues I've always had with putting a chip in a ball is where do you put the chip? What part of the ball? If you put a chip in the middle, it's not going to tell me where the tip of the ball is. If you put a ball in the tip, which tip? Both tips? What about if the ball is side to side and it's like the middle of the ball that crosses in some kind of a weird situation? I suppose if you had some kind of super advanced technology, you could say, here's the 2 points of the chips, and so you could do a full outline of the ball to be able to determine, like the exact, you could draw an image of the ball as it moves down the field and see where it goes and everything. I don't know. I if I were Roger Goodell, if I was in that position, I would be working with people at very high levels of technology. I'd be working with, different chip manufacturers. I'd be working with data technologists and everything else, people who work in the sports industry, people that don't work in the sports industry, all these different cameras and sensors and everything else, and I'd be spending a lot of money on this because we can make something super cool happen. And we can work on it during the off season. This isn't something, it's not like we can test it in a season after we've been doing lots of testing. I'd be out there every day like, bro, let's throw the ball around and see what happens. We'll have a couple people on the field play. Heck, we can bring in a high school football team and be like, hey, you want to play on a professional football field? Can help us test out some new football equipment. Test it out. I'll sit there with these people. We can check all the different things, work out the different bugs, see what works, see what doesn't. Why not? The only thing I can think is it's money. They don't want to spend the money. This is all proprietary technology, so not all proprietary, but it would have to some degree be proprietary to fit the needs of the NFL. So it's going to be very expensive, and it's probably they're going to spend money on things that don't end up working, because that's what happens when you try new things, is you try and you fail, and they just don't feel like it because it's good enough. And that's what I don't like. Everything is about getting more money and things costing less money, right? We invest in player safety because if we don't, it will cost us more money. We want to expand the NFL because it brings in more money. How about we spend money to just make it more cool to watch, but you don't actually make more money? No, that's not really in our business model. That's stupid to me. Bro, you are in control of the purse strings. You guys get to make decisions on how to spend some of this money and get to do cool things. So it feels like we have a CEO and not a football fan running the NFL, and that's what bothers me. I want somebody running the NFL that the CFO hates me. You know what I mean? The CFO is like, bro, we got to stop spending so much money. Why are we doing this? And the answer to that question should always be, because it's freaking dope, Doug. That's why. 'Cause it's dope. Why are we equipping the cheerleaders with flamethrowers? 'Cause it's dope, Doug. Get out of my office, dude.
All right, last one, my man. Sorry, I'm just getting caught up on a lot of your pods here, but it's crazy to me, just as a pleb watching draft footage, So last year, the Packers were often mocked Cooper DeJean, right? Obviously, we know that. Now, I got the Deshaun thing because I guess Morgan Wright and a couple other guys, right? Because it looked like last year that this year's interior offensive line class was going to be pretty weak too, which I think that's true. I don't know. Maybe it's not. But it appeared like last year's interior offensive line class was a lot stronger than this one's going to be. We'll see what happens with him. I suspect he's going to be a pretty good player. But what's crazy to me is I'll sit there watch, like last year, for example. I watched Cooper DeJean highlights. All right? Okay, highlights. Everybody has cool highlights. But then, I just watched some of his games. Like, the guy was a freaking player, Like, he was a great football player. And I'm just thinking to myself last year, the chances that this guy is just an outright bust are so low. Like, if you could get the guy in the second round, I've had a hard time believing that he could be anything below like a second or third round talent, given his skill set. And it's just watching him this year and then him pull a Nick Collins in the Super Bowl. It's crazy. It just made me think, like, the amount of mental gymnastics required by NFL teams to talk themselves out of Cooper DeJean was a bit crazy to me. That's one of those where I'm like, what are you doing? If obviously we got Edge Cooper, but if there was any way to get up and take that guy, what the heck? That one hurts just because I don't understand. I don't understand how all these teams can talk themselves out of that guy being a stud. What? Because he doesn't nicely fit into a single position? Yeah, okay. So what? The guy you put on the on the video for any period of time, and it's like, oh, geez, this guy's freaking a stud, you know? He's a stud. He's just really a sound football player and a stud. And so, you know, this time of year, I don't know who it'll be this year, but man, I just think sometimes the GMs get a little bit too cute by half, you know what I mean? Like, just take good football players. I don't care. I don't want like low production, high Senior Bowl. No, take a guy with production who is a freaking stud in college. That's what I'm looking for this year.
Well, I can't speak for you, but the issue that I always have with that is, if I'm being completely, it wasn't just Cooper DeJean. It's not like every single one of us was just saying Cooper DeJean. Like, nobody else is interesting. Just Cooper DeJean is the guy that we want. There were 5, 6, 7, 8 guys, and almost all of them suck. Jerzon Newton was one of those guys. He's not good. So we can't just use the one example of it actually panning out and say, you know, there we go. See, we all knew it, and teams are stupid, and we knew it. I mean, that's always, there's going to be a handful of guys that we like. 1 or 2 are going to pan out. The rest of them are not. We're not going to talk about the ones that don't. And, you know, Cooper DeJean is not, you know, if we were going based on the standard of you know, just the good football players, not the projects, I don't think he's the guy that we'd be looking at. He ranked 82nd last year via PFF, behind guys like, and he did pan out well, but Quinion Mitchell was number 1. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold, who is just dog crap. Chris Abrams-Drain, Kamari Lassiter, on and on and on and on. Nate Wiggins. If we're talking production as far as like interceptions, Mike Sanristil was second with 6. Terrion Arnold had 5. I mean, Terrion Arnold is the dude. 88 PFF grade, 90 run defense, 85 coverage, 5 interceptions, 13 pass breakups, which is the 5th highest. Quinion Mitchell had 14 pass breakups. Cooper was 77 PFF grade, 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. That's it. He was tied for 168th in pass breakups for corners. So it kind of just would come down to subjective film watching, which again, PFF grades are film watching, and they weren't as impressed as most of the other corners. And I'm speaking to somebody that liked Cooper. I was all in on Cooper. I'm just saying I was all in on a lot of guys. I liked Quinion Mitchell. I liked Cooper DeJean. I liked Kool-Aid McKinstry. I liked Mike Sanristil. I liked TJ Tampa. I liked Andrew Phillips. And that's just corners. How about all the offensive linemen? Fuaga, Fashanu, Fatanu. Remember Graham Barton? Everybody wanted Graham Barton. We passed on Graham Barton. Why didn't we take Graham Barton? We should have taken Graham Barton. Graham Barton was bad. Jerzon Newton, freak, going to be great. He was bad. So, I mean, the point is, everybody sees it, and then everybody has flashbacks to when we like Cooper DeJean, and it just kind of gets embedded in our brain. See, we knew it. Why didn't we just do it? But then we conveniently forget about all the other guys that also really just didn't pan out. And so, you know, again, I can't speak for you specifically because I don't know how your feelings were, but I know how mine were, and they were kind of all over the place. I would have been over the moon excited about Cooper DeJean, and I would have been right about that one, but I would have been wrong about a lot of other guys. And I think our desire for just get the really good players that are high production has more to do with the fact that we haven't been doing it than actually looking into it and seeing how well that's actually working out on the other side of things, because there's a lot of high production guys that are not producing right now. I mean, Dallas Turner, that the Minnesota Vikings took. 55 pressures, 11 sacks, 82 PFF grade, and he had, I forget exactly what metric it was, like long jump or something crazy, something that has to do with explosion, which is big for pass rushers. It was the highest correlation between being successful and edge rush metrics. And he, like, freaking broke the record on that. So he checked every single box. He went to Alabama. He's an early round pick. He's productive. He's got really good PFF grades, really great film and highlights. He's got all the statistical metrics that you'd want. He was bad. Not necessarily saying I disagree as far as the direction that I would prefer going, just that there's no fix-all, there's no cure-all. You pick any direction you want to go, you're going to miss more often than you hit. All right, let's take our final break. Got Garrett from Southern Illinois.
Hey, Ryan Garrett from Southern Illinois.
Yo.
Just want to echo some sentiments that you had raised on a recent podcast about Coach Duran. And I remember him back in the 90s when Holmgren was hired and he created his coaching staff. Dick Duran was defense coordinator side of things. And, people just forget just how significant that coaching staff was back then. You had Coach Gruden, you had Mariucci, you had Morning Wag, Ray Rhodes. All those guys went on to be head coaches, and that says a lot. That says a lot. And prayers go out to Duran's family. That sounded pretty tragic. So. Yeah, if you guys would just go back and watch on YouTube the legacy videos of Green Bay and the days where Ron Wolf came on and hired Holmgren, he basically told him, like, you get your guys, and he did, and it was pretty impressive. Makes me kind of wonder if Holmgren had just stayed and not done his own thing out in Seattle, if he had stayed as coach and we didn't go through that coaching carousel of Rhodes and Sherman and all that, what would have happened between him and Favre, because I kind of feel like they had mutual respect for each other and they worked well together. And after that, Favre just kind of became a gunslinger on his own and didn't really have anybody to kind of rein him in. So who knows, but just wanted to give a shout out. So I'm out.
Yeah, man, just brings you back to a fun football era. There's a lot of guys that, I definitely remember him the most as a Chicago Bears coach, and that's back when, I don't know, they had coaches that kind of lasted a while, and I don't know why he sticks out to me. Obviously, you got a lot of other more well-known guys, but it's kind of that range of post-Ditka, pre-Trestman, Dave Wanstead that I kind of grew up with, and it was Dick Duran from 99 to 2003, then Lovey from 2004 to 2012. And that was kind of it, man. I mean, from Ditka to Lovey was kind of the Packers or the Bears, I hate to say glory years, because it's not like they were necessarily good under Dick Duran or Dave Wanstead for that matter, but it's just, I don't know, man. It was my childhood. And they had some good players, and they had, tough defense. They were at least to some degree respectable,
Ryan, it's Aaron from Eau Claire.
Yo.
And I'm going to talk about something that I really don't like talking about, but I keep seeing stuff, and it just bothers me.
Okay.
So it's this whole conversation about the conspiracy theory that everything in the NFL is fixed or rigged or scripted or whatever. I know people that I've talked to within the last couple of weeks that, like, every time they bring up the NFL or sports, they're like, it's basically the WWE. That's what they say.
Yeah.
They say it's like the WWE or WWF. It's all fixed. It's all scripted. It's all fake. And whoever, wins and loses each game.
I love that you said WWE and then corrected yourself and said WWF. I respect the hell out of that.
They're basically, the losers are basically losing on purpose, throwing the game, and the winners are basically told to do this. And then, so after I had this conversation, I went and just kind of looked it up and just to see what people are saying about it. So I listened to a few podcasts from just random people, watched some YouTube videos, stuff like that, where people are telling the reasons why they believe that the NFL is rigged. And now this person I was talking to actually believes that all sports are rigged, full stop, which I think is a pretty crazy claim.
It's out there.
Or a pretty outrageous claim. Pretty intense.
Trying so hard not to say stupid.
I guess what I find sort of alarming is I don't personally believe that. I don't personally believe that that sports are fixed. I don't believe that sort of cheating or fixes or whatever never happen, because obviously, like, sometimes people do nefarious things on their own accord. There's been evidence of instances of that in history, but they're relatively few and far between. And it's always kind of like an example of someone who did something with, again, nefarious intentions, I guess. Kind of acting as their own agent or whatever. Not like a league-wide thing or whatever, like
a boxer throwing a fight.
Big, giant conspiracy. I'm seeing that I'm up against 3 minutes. Let me call back.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of my big objection to a lot of this is the impossibility, if you were to try to do this without it ever getting out after all these years, because people have been making this claim since forever. It's not like it just started with the Chiefs. People have been saying that the NFL is rigged my entire lifetime. So this is multiple people who have been running the league, right? So they pass it on. So somebody takes over the NFL and they're like, hey, just so you know, we rig games. Here's how we do it. And you have to be working with the owners, and the owners have to be working with the coaches and the players. And, I mean, it's got to permeate the entire league, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody. With the exception of some players who will come out and say things like, oh, yeah, I think the NFL's rigged. Wouldn't you know, dummy? I mean, depending on in what way it's rigged. Because, I mean, to your point, there are people that believe, like, every catch, every pass, every drop is rigged, which is crazy to think that that would be the case. That these people are so unbelievably talented that they catch every catch and drop every drop, and okay.
Okay, so, where was I? Yeah, so anyways, so I don't buy into the sports are fixed thing, other than, just the idea that in every community in the world, there's people that are going to try to bend the rules and try to, do the wrong thing for their own selfish purposes and, so on and so forth. These things do happen, but I don't think it's like a big conspiracy that the entire thing is scripted, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Or even that most of it is fixed or scripted. I don't think it's scripted at all. I think if there are instances of corruption in that sense, that it's, individuals acting on their own accord under the below deck, so to speak, right? Below board. So, anyways, but what I find kind of disturbing, I guess, I don't know if that's too extreme of a word, but when I go on these YouTube channels and these videos where people are talking about sports being rigged, there is like just giant swaths of people commenting below like, yeah, I mean, if you don't believe sports are rigged, you're pretty much, an idiot or whatever. And I'm like, dude, this is intense. Like, I don't know. And it'll be like a video. There's one video of, the old Houston.
It's always a sign of intelligence when somebody's greatest argument is, if you don't agree with me, you're just stupid.
Houston's running back, Arian Foster. He was on a sports show. It seemed like he was being entirely sarcastic. He's like, yeah, they scripted my ACL tear. They scripted everything,
Right.
I was handed a script at the beginning of the season. They said, you're going to tear your ACL in game 3. And to me, it was obvious that he was being sarcastic because that's a sarcastic type thing to say. But all these people down there are like, see, he's proving that it's scripted. He admits it. And
which is funny because it means literally every other NFL player, every single one of them. Like, Brett Favre's injuries were all faked. all the concussions, Tua curling up on the field, that's all fake. Damar Hamlin being taken off in an ambulance, that was all fake. Guys' legs getting twisted in all different directions, those are all fake, right? Is this all fake? Sometimes they accidentally get hurt, but sometimes it's real. But every other NFL player, every single one of them, has had a script handed to them and they're keeping it a secret, right? Which is kind of crazy because these guys are fighting real hard for these big contracts, but then they're acting because they know whether they're going to get the big contract or not, right? Or maybe that's why Romeo Doubs was upset, because he got handed the script that said, you're not going to do very well this year, and so you're not going to get the big contract. And he's like, oh, man. Or maybe the contracts are fake. Maybe there is no, everybody kind of gets paid the same. I mean, why would you actually offer somebody a big contract if they're not actually that talented? You just pretend that they're getting these big contracts. I mean, do you understand when you just talk these things through how stupid they sound?
Yeah, I don't know. I just find it kind of alarming. Maybe this is just how conspiracy theories are. There's just going to be a loud, vocal group of people who are shouting it from the rooftops. But it's just, I don't know. It's hard to read just the intensity of it. If someone was like, hey, I know not everyone believes this, but I believe this. Here, 1 second. One more.
Yep.
Yeah, so, like, if people were like, this is an interesting conspiracy and whatever, like...
I like a good conspiracy.
That would be one thing, but...
It's got to be at least a little bit believable, though, Give me something to sink my teeth into. This stuff is stupid.
It's all based... to me, the hardest thing about conspiracy theories is that the people who say them are saying them as if they're total fact. Like, they can't be false.
Right.
Like, well, that this is true, right? And there's no conclusive evidence to support their argument necessarily.
Well, that's why it's so stupid, right? It's just, don't be afraid to be stupid in that situation. Well, this is true, right? No, I don't. What's your evidence? Because what's going to follow that. Well, it's freaking obvious, isn't it? Isn't it obvious? Everybody knows. That's all they have is everybody knows, and then some joking Arian Foster video. That's it. Okay, that's not evidence of anything. It's not. I'm sorry. It doesn't work.
Rarely. But there's also no argument against it because you can't, because everything you try to...
Well, there is. It's called rationality, right? It's called being rational. I mean, there's no evidence against it, just like there's no evidence against the fact that I am actually Satan. Like, incarnate, I decided to take the form of a human being that lives in Wisconsin and is a Packers podcaster. Prove me wrong. See, you can't. So that puts it on an equal footing. No, it's not an equal footing. Not being able to definitively disprove something doesn't mean it's equally valid or more valid or in any way valid.
Say against it, they're going to say, like, well, that's what they want you to believe. Yes, they put...
See, here's the issue. You can apply that to anything. This is why conspiracy theories in general are stupid, because you can make up anything in the world, and then I can steal all your arguments in favor of why you believe that, and we're just going in circles, right? I believe that. Well, take that commercial, that stupid, what is it? Whatever, pizza commercial or something. The idea that the NFL is trying to sell you food, right? Oh, Jerry's eating rice. How do you know it's not true? You don't know, do you? You can't. You. What's your evidence that it's not true? Which is stupid, by the way. You're not trying to prove that it's not true. You're supposed to prove things that are true. Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, that's what they want you to believe. You can just take all your stupid arguments and apply it to literally any of the dumbest possible theories in the world, and it's as valid as exactly what you're saying right now. So that's the problem with all of this nonsense.
That there on purpose so that you would believe it was real. So it just ends up being like you can't really argue against it because no matter what you argue, there's always the counter argument that that's part of the conspiracy too, that you fell for their trap by believing when this, so anyways.
You fell for the trap of not blindly believing something with no evidence. You idiot.
I really, really don't like talking about the conspiracy theory of sports being fixed, but it just seems like so many people are like talking about it as if it's just an uncontroversial fact that I just had to come on and just say something and see what your thoughts are, because I just keep seeing it. I think when the refs make a bad call that affects the impacts the outcome of a game, I think it's, I think for the conspiracy community, that's like, oh, see, that's the evidence. That's the evidence. See, they're calling the game. But I don't know. I just don't. Well, I don't want to believe it's true, of course, but because it would ruin the game. But I also just don't believe it's true. I don't believe that sports are all fixed. I think if there are any nefarious goings on under the surface, which there probably are at some level, that it's more, more like politics, not some grand conspiracy where some mastermind sitting in a chair and laughing maniacally, It's more just, individuals kind of interacting and butting heads and acting out of different motives. So anyways, that's all I got. I'm up against 2 minutes again. I'm done.
Well, let me see if I can help out here, because this is where one of my new favorite things comes into play, which is the razors. Philosophical razors. They call them razors because they're used to cut away unnecessary assumptions in reasoning. The one razor that everybody's familiar with is Occam's razor, which is entity should not be multiplied beyond necessity, also more commonly explained as when faced with competing hypothesis, the one with the fewest assumptions is generally preferred. Or more simply, forget how people specifically usually say that, but it's the simplest explanation is usually true, something to that effect, would absolutely apply here. If you're going to add layers of unnecessary complexity, which is an additional razor, by the way, you're going to have additional reasoning. Number one, for why you're adding the complexity, but also number two, additional evidence. One of the ones you've heard me say numerous times, Hanlon's razor, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. That also applies to this, because what do people assume? Why do people assume things are rigged? Oh, the referees are, look at these mistakes. They would never. Yes, they would. Yes, they would. One of the best ones in situations like this is called Hitchens' razor. What can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. If you'd like to tell me something, that's fine. If you want to tell me something without evidence, then don't expect me to take it seriously. If you bring something to me without evidence, I will dismiss it as though there's no evidence, because there is none. Alder's razor. If something cannot be settled by experiment or observation, it's not worth debating. Can you prove it? No? Then what's the point? The one I just mentioned, Sagan's razor. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. These are obviously extraordinary claims. You cannot pretend this is the simplest explanation and therefore it needs to be explained away. No, the simplest explanation is that everything is exactly as it seems. If you're going to add all these unnecessary, complex layers, that all these people are coming in and creating these layers of deception, it requires extraordinary amounts of evidence, and you have none of it. Hume's razor. One should not assume causes or connections beyond what can be observed or experienced, similar to Occam's, but not exactly. Notice it doesn't say that it's never more than it seems, it just says you shouldn't assume it, which is true, and that's a problem with, we have such a conspiracy theory culture today, where the conspiracy is what is assumed. We assume that the baseline thing that must be true is the conspiracy. No, that should never be the assumption. Similar to what you had said, Popper's falsifiability principle. Basically, in order for something to be considered scientific, it has to be falsifiable. Saying that I have a thing here that is infalsifiable, therefore it's true, is incorrect. So, take those and enjoy. But ultimately, in these situations, not that you were actually engaging with anyone directly, at least in so far as the podcast, I guess you were at one point, but it's always best to, rather than trying to engage or fight, just sit back and say, okay, lay it out for me. Well, this, okay, is that all you have? And then they flail. Well, you're bought by the system, man. Okay, I just asked if you had any more evidence. Yeah, my 2 eyes. Okay, well, that's not evidence. I'm asking you to make a case to me and to provide to me evidence. Do you have evidence? Well, isn't it obvious? Well, if it's obvious, then it should be very easy to convince me and provide me with the evidence. Do you have any evidence? You don't have to engage beyond just, okay, convince me. Okay, well, I'm not convinced yet. Do you have anything else? Because I'd like to be convinced. Can you convince me, please? Yeah, no, that sounds nice, but I'm weird. I require evidence. Do you have any? Yeah, I'm sorry. Come on, man, is not evidence. Do you have evidence? Do you have information, data, or facts to support or contradict a claim? Because calling me an idiot and saying, come on, man, is not the most convincing thing, and it's odd to me because you're saying it's obvious, yet you have, to this point, provided nothing. So you're obviously sitting on something very powerful right now, and I don't know why you're just making fun of me. Granted, I'm stupid. I mean, I'll gift you that. I'm pretty slow, and so you're gonna have to talk slow when you explain this to me. But if you could just show me that mountain of evidence you're clearly sitting on, because this is so patently obvious, it would be appreciated. And again, talk slow, because I'm a little dumb. It's the whole Socratic method of debate. Rather than saying, I don't think so, when somebody says, I think the NFL is rigged, just say, how'd you come to that conclusion? Or, first of all, make them clarify, because usually that's where they'll be done to begin with. What do you mean by rigged? What specifically is rigged? How is it rigged? Who's rigging? In what ways are they rigging? Is it individual players? Because I would believe that. Somebody's got some debts to the mob kind of thing, you know what I mean? Is it teams? Is it the NFL league-wide? How are they doing it? What are they doing? Let's make sure that we have very clear terms about what you're saying. Then once you have that, you can launch into how did you arrive at that conclusion? What evidence did you find to bring you to this? You must have done a lot of research. It's not really going to get anywhere because most of this is just nonsense, but it's the fun of it all. Somebody says something dumb, and then they get angry really fast because with just a question or two, you force them to recognize they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. And people really don't like that. Which is why I always try to follow the principle of not overextending. It's not something it's not like some platonic principle or anything. It's just something I made up, more or less. But through having argued a lot on social media over the years, you always get yourself in trouble when you start swinging wildly into areas and you don't really know what you're talking about. That's when you get in a lot of trouble. Then you got to backtrack and apologize, and then you start to sound stupid, and it defeats the whole broad. Slow down. Only stay in your little realm of what it is you know. Don't get baited into any arguments. Don't go chasing them down rabbit holes. Stay exactly on the one topic, and do not move unless you are satisfied sufficiently with the answers that you're asking. You're the one in charge of this thing here. You force them to tire themselves out. Anyways, I'm going to go. You all have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.